welcome to the glorious world of infrared photography. Hi guys, and welcome to another video. And in today's video I'm going to talk about infrared photography. Now if you've watched a couple of my previous videos, you will know that I'm a great fan of infrared photography. It's just something I love doing. And yeah, I love photographing stone circles. So as you will see by the photos which are on screen at the moment, I have a bit of history of me and infrared and stone circles, and it's something I'm very proud of. But today what I'm doing, I'm actually trying out a new freshly converted infrared camera which I purchased off eBay. I paid £325 for it. It's a Panasonic G7 converted to 720 NM, which basically means it's near infrared, fully into the infrared spectrum. So that means you'll get a little bit of visible light, but the majority is light that you can't see, invisible light as such. Now, whilst I wouldn't call myself an infrared expert, I do have a lot of experience of shooting with infrared. So I think obviously if you do anything for long enough, you do pick up experience simply by what works and doesn't work. And I'm seeing a lot of things recently with people giving information which doesn't actually particularly make that much sense. So in this video what I want to try and do is dispel a few of these myths and to just really simplify infrared photography for anybody who's considering giving it a go. But before I do that, I've really just got to nip over there and take a shot. Right, that shot looked gorgeous. Really pleased with that one. Right, the first myth I want to dispel is the fact that I've seen YouTubers say that you can take any normal camera, put an infrared filter on it, and you will get infrared results. Unfortunately, it's just not the case. Yes, 80% of the time you might do, but as I've found out, if you're using a Panasonic body, it's just not going to happen. The infrared blocking filter on the sensor is that strong that basically hardly any infrared comes through. And that means whilst you get a sort of nice black and white image that almost looks like you've put a dark red filter on, you don't get an infrared shot. And it can be really disappointing. And let's face it, if you've spent like 60, 70 quid on a decent infrared filter, put it on your camera and then get basically naff results, that's pretty much going to turn you off infrared photography straight away. So what I would say is if you've got an older camera, you may be lucky, you may get away with using infrared filters. I've had good results with a Canon 5D Mark I and Mark II, it was pretty decent. And in the past I've used a Fuji XE1, I think it was, and yeah, that was all right. But unfortunately, if you want to shoot infrared, get yourself a properly converted infrared camera. You can pick them up nice and cheap, or alternatively, if you've got an old camera body knocking around the house, get it converted to infrared. The process can be relatively cheap, you know, anything between about 150 to 300 pounds I've seen. And I think that price can actually depend on the size of the sensor you have. But effectively what they do during the conversion process is they remove that nasty infrared blocking filter and they put a filter in that actually blocks out visible light, and that's what you want. But yeah, unfortunately guys, you can't always get by with an infrared filter on a normal camera. I really need to turn off the self-timer, it's a tad annoying. Anyway, the second sort of myth I want to dispel is that all lenses are good for infrared and visible light, because it's basically just a lie. Unfortunately, a lot of lenses will create a hotspot when shooting the infrared spectrum. And again, it's down to coatings, and a lot of modern lenses aren't optimised for infrared. Now, here's the good news. The cheaper chattier the lens you have, the likelihood is it'll probably be quite good for infrared. This is the little 12 to 32 Panasonic kit lens, which, whilst I actually quite like it, it doesn't get that good reviews, you know, and it's nothing very exciting. But you know what? For infrared, it seems to be doing a really good job. So yeah, something to be mindful of, that you may get your nice body converted and then put your lens on and find you have this horrible hot spot in the middle of the frame where it's basically a lot brighter, which with a bit of Photoshop work you can sort of get rid of, but it can be a serious pain. So yeah, keep that in mind, do a bit of research. There's plenty of online lists of lenses that will work, and yeah, just make sure you've actually got one that will, and if not, factor in the cost of buying one. Now the next one actually really annoys me. So my third myth I wanted to dispel is the fact that you can only shoot infrared in the summer in bright sunshine. Absolute twaddle. I shoot infrared throughout the year, and honestly, think of it the same as normal light really. If you go into the winter months, your normal light gets a little bit weaker, but it's still there. Well, guess what? Infrared's still there, it's just a little bit weaker, and that means you can shoot all day and the infrared light's just that little bit softer. And yeah, it's one thing that just really annoys me. I understand it, because at the end of the day, your foliage is going to be better in the summer. You know, your trees are going to have a lot more leaves on, and so there's going to be a lot more infrared being bounced back. But you know what? It's not a good enough reason to not shoot for the rest of the year. I've even shot infrared in the snow, and honestly, the results have been great. So don't just get your infrared camera out during the summer months, because if nothing else, that's a good enough reason to not get your camera converted, isn't it? Because if you ain't going to use it 3 months of the year, well, you've got to be pretty committed, haven't you? I would say shoot all year round. And another thing is, you don't actually even need bright sunshine. Overcast conditions can work really nicely, even rain. Just treat infrared like you would a normal camera. Just what you need to do is start to realise how the light works, and to start sort of recognising how the light works. A bit like shooting normal visible light photography really. And once you start realising that, there's no reason at all why you can't shoot all year round. Another strange myth is the fact that people think that you have to use a tripod always for shooting infrared photography, and that's not the case. If you've got an infrared converted body, you can quite easily use it handheld. The main reason I'm using a tripod now is simply because of the fact that I'm talking to you, and because I want to try and get my compositions right while the light's changing. As in normal photography, are you seeing the pattern here? A lot of it's just exactly the same as shooting normal light. Infrared photography is not this great mythical thing. It's just a case of recording light that we just happen not to be able to see. But if your camera is sensitive to infrared, it will see it, and your exposures will be very similar to shooting in visible light. Now, back in the days of film, this was slightly different, because film would be sensitive to normal light as well. So you would put a visible light blocking filter on to block everything out apart from infrared light, which, for example, would take an ISO, say 400 film down to about ISO 6, hence being a really long exposure. And also the other problem being that you couldn't actually see through the viewfinder. So what you'd have to do is compose the shot and then put your filter on. And you're never going to do that handheld, are you? Because if you can't see through the filter to actually take a shot, it's virtually impossible. But with an infrared converted body, it's a doddle. It's really simple. So yeah, you don't need a tripod. It can be just as convenient as any other kind of photography. It is, after all, just photography. And finally, really, I'm not trying to dispel a myth as such here, but it's just a bit of a frustration. There seems to be this misconception that you can only use infrared for landscape photography. And the reality is, it's great for other sorts of photography as well. You know, it can be really nice to take an infrared camera around the city, for example, and sort of do architecture shots. You can even use it for portraits if you want, but I wouldn't recommend using A30NM for that, because basically the person you're going to take a photo of is going to look really white and a bit ghostly. But you know, if you want that white ghostly look, A30NM is just the job for you. But yeah, I think really the point I'm trying to make is, it's just light. Don't be scared of it. Experiment. Find out for yourself. Don't take other people's word for it. And that's it, guys. That's my 5 myths that I wanted to dispel. I just wanted to get that off my chest, really. I love infrared photography. I think more people should be doing it. Yes, there will be a cost, but I think really it's relatively small compared to the results you can actually get. Now, one thing for film photographers out there, because you're probably thinking now, why not just shoot infrared film? And if you saw my last infrared video, I think really what I realised, I started off shooting infrared film. I went then to shoot a lot of infrared digital. Then I went back to shooting infrared film, and I'll be honest, after using an infrared digitally converted body, using infrared film is an absolute pain. Simply due to the fact that you have to compose your shot and then put your filter on and try and factor in basically where you need to focus, so the focusing is going to be slightly different on your lens. That's why your lenses have infrared markings on old film cameras, so you have to slightly adjust it. And you have to adjust the exposure, try and compensate for that 5 to 6 stops. But the problem is that 5 to 6 stops could actually be different depending on how strong the infrared light is. And of course you can't meter that, so it's impossible to tell. Digital infrared bodies are far more convenient. But really, overall, whatever you want to do it's fine, you know, because it's all about enjoying yourself, it's all about experimenting. And I would love more people to shoot infrared, because I think it's an absolutely wonderful field of photography and something I'm sure you would enjoy. Anyway guys, thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up, maybe subscribe to the channel if you haven't, and I'll see you again very soon for another video. Thanks for watching.